Welcome to the third episode of Talk to She. We don't have any beers today because it's 11 a.m. We had an early morning.
Earliest episode that we've filmed.
Falcon doesn't work anymore, so we can do this, thankfully.
Thankfully. How are you, bro?
I'm good, bro. How's everything?
Good. First day without a job. So, I still woke up early, decided to film early. So, it's good. We're not filming at 6 p.m. like we usually do.
Are you sad you're not working?
So, I'm not sad. I'm a little stressed. Yesterday I was a little stressed. I've been lifting some heavy weights in the gym, just pumping out all the stress. So, that's something that I realized. But, taking it one day at a time, did a bunch of things I had to keep up with, like this morning. Did some research for today's video. That's why I have a legal pad, which is kind of official.
You've been sleeping a lot, too?
I slept the last 3 days because I was on vacation. But, today, I started waking up early. And I actually realized that it was earlier for me to wake up today without a job than it was when I did have a job.
Oh, wow. What time did you wake up?
Today, I woke up at 8.
Oh, wow.
Usually, since I'm working from home, I'll wake up at 9 and be sitting wake up at 8:57 and be sitting at 9 for the 9 a.m. meetings or whatever I had, or 9:30. I might have not woken up at 10 a.m. occasionally in a few weekdays, but happens here.
That's a secret.
It's a secret, yeah.
What do you want to talk today about?
So we were having an intellectual conversation the other day.
Like we always do.
Like we always do in our WhatsApp group chat with our friends. And they were talking about 401ks. And I was actually impressed because I showed up to the conversation late that people were pointing out some really good points. And this is something that we talk about a lot, and thinking that most of our viewers are people our age, like our friends. We wanted to do an episode to talk about 401k.
401k and retirement accounts in general. How do you retire? Because we're going to start working. There's a lot of people that don't know how to save, where to start. And we've read some books that give you pretty basic guidelines of what to do with your money. And we have a friend, shout out JP, that started working last week. And he's dealing with the whole process. And we just want to walk through some of the ways that we see efficient how to save for retirement. Because now a lot of companies are not giving pensions as much anymore.
Correct.
Because it's extremely difficult. Mm-hmm. All the accounting for it is hard. So the government came out with 401ks and Roth IRAs to incentivize people to save money for retirement, which is basically their own pension. Yeah,
I actually didn't know that. And one thing that is important is, well, first of all, we're not, big disclaimers, we're not financial advisors. Big disclaimers. All that we're talking about today are just our opinions and what we think about it. These are not recommendations.
Right.
But the good thing is that the mix is that I've been working for a little bit. So, I have my own 401k. I'll talk about the weights that I have in my account right now.
I have my own Roth too. So.
Barney has his own Roth. And Barney also have I'd say more than the average person's knowledge in tax and the accounting side behind, because that's what Barney studied in college. That's what he's studying for the CPA and all that stuff. So to get started with the basics is, Barney, what is a 401k? Well, you kind of already mentioned it, but what is it?
So the 401k is a code in the tax code that is basically that a company offers, you can probably explain it better, offers a retirement account in which whatever you put in, the company takes away from your salary, and that is tax deductible.
Yeah.
So instead of, let's say your salary is $70K a year, and you tell your company to take away $10K per year, I don't know how much that is per month, the company automatically takes that away from your salary, and that is deductible to your tax account. And there are some companies like the one you're in that fired you, that do something called a matching.
So a 401k it's a type of retirement account.
Yeah.
The only difference between a normal retirement account, so they usually call IRAs, which is an investment retirement account.
A traditional investment retirement account.
Is that it's with your employer, and like Barney said, they might give you some matching, which we'll get to. But before there's two types of 401ks. They are Roth, and they are normal retirement accounts.
Right.
So the biggest difference between the two is the way that they're taxed.
Yeah.
Which are you explained it. I have this thing that a friend told me once that I like, so I'll mention that.
That makes it easier?
Yeah.
So for me, in the 401k is a tax, you put before tax dollars, which means that you get a deduction from the money you put in, but you have to pay taxes after you take it out when you're 60.
Yeah.
So the advantage of this is that you have more money to invest, and that's more money that grows over the long term. But you have to pay the tax afterwards when you take it out when you're 60 years old.
That's a normal 401k.
That's a normal 401k. Okay. By the way, all these accounts, you can't take the money out until you're 59 and a half.
Yep.
if you take it out, you have to pay taxes and you have to pay a 10% penalty.
Because the reason why this is set up, like Barney mentioned, is the government wants to incentivize you to save money. That way, you're not only relying on Social Security in the future.
Right, because a big problem in today's society is that Social Security is underfunded, and a lot of people do not have enough to live after they retire. So there's a way that the government did to incentivize saving.
And the incentive is they say, hey, we're going to give you a tax deduction or we're going to charge you less taxes. The only condition is you're not touching this money until you get into 59 and a half, unless there's some very, very, very specific instances, which I think is like if you buy a house and then something else, right?
Emergencies, but you still have to pay the tax.
You still have to pay the tax.
What you don't have to pay is the penalty, the penalty fee. And so for the Roth, the traditional IRA, it's a tax deduction, but you have to pay the tax in 40 years when you take it out. Mm-hmm. The Roth is basically the other way around. You don't get a deduction today. You have to pay your tax. But since you already paid the tax on that money, you don't have to pay the tax when you're 60. So let's say that you invested $6,000 today and you make a great investment. In 40 years, when you take it out, let's say you have $20,000 trillion because your investment was so great, you don't have to pay tax on that money because you made a great investment. An article actually came out recently about Peter Thiel, which is a creator of PayPal and Palantir, that he actually has a $5 billion Roth IRA.
That he's not going to get taxed on.
And the story goes that when I think Bill Clinton was the one that created this in 1998, and at that point the maximum that you could put in was $2,000. Nowadays it's $6,000
a year.
And then since he put in his $2,000 because he wasn't rich yet.
Okay.
And he would invest in PayPal and Facebook, which were PayPal he co-founded, and Facebook was a company that he gave angel funding to.
Okay.
And obviously those companies exploded.
Wow, that's crazy.
And now he has a $5 billion Roth IRA, which he's not gonna get taxed on.
Damn,
so
that's
imagine
crazy.
That's a little.
Yeah. Damn, that's crazy. Well, it's also he probably had like a specific IRA that allowed him to like put the money in those accounts, because that's another thing that we'll talk about is like what can you invest in when you have the IRAs, especially when you have like a employer sponsored program. They might limit you in the things that you can invest on. What Barney said is amazing. The biggest difference between a normal and a Roth is the way you're taxed. The way that a friend put it is a normal IRA, a normal 401k, which is pre-tax. It taxes the harvest and not the seed. So it taxes the amount of money that you make in the stocks. And then the Roth is the opposite. It taxes the seed that you put in, but not the harvest that comes out.
Absolutely.
So that's the biggest way. Which one is best for you? My understanding, I don't know what you think, is if you're aiming that you're gonna make more money in the future when you take it out than the amount of money that you're putting on right now, which with us being people that are just starting working now, that's probably what we're aiming for. It is best for you to start with a Roth IRA, and there's a certain point when you reach the peak of like the most money that you're making in your life. That's when you should switch into a normal IRA. That's what I think it is, something like that. Right? Yeah.
No, at the end, I think no matter how much money you're making, a Roth is your best bet because you're not getting taxed. Well, yeah, exactly. If you think you're gonna get taxed less in the future, if you think tax rates are gonna decrease in the future, your best bet is to wait for the future.
Yeah.
But obviously, like for us, hopefully we're gonna be making more money in 30, 40 years than we are gonna be making now, right? So the general idea is that if you're a 20-year-old with a starting salary at a company, you're probably going to be making more money, and because of that you're going to be in a higher tax bracket when you're 59, hopefully. And then obviously the Roth IRA is a great way to not pay tax, and that's why they limit it. That's why it's only $6,000 per year, because since it's such a great tax benefit, because like Peter Thiel, if you make great investments, you can be you can
billionaire that's not gonna get taxed on.
You can have millions of dollars that the government is gonna miss out on that revenue. So that's why it's limited. So the Roth, I think the Roth is a great way to start, and
definitely is the best way to start when you start working.
And the good thing about the Roth too, which we can talk about it now, is that with the Roth, you create your own account. It's basically like having Robinhood. You can invest in whatever stock you want. You can invest in anything you want through the Roth. With the 401k, I don't have one, but as you've explained to me, there's limits or there's special funds that you have to invest in depending on your company.
So if you want to get ahead of the program, something that Barney did, and I like congratulating him because it's a really good move, is if you have some extra cash before even you start working, like the sooner you can get one of those accounts open, the better. So what Barney did is that he opened a Roth IRA. So it's not a 401k because it's not employee based.
Right,
and you start putting money. And what I told him is that's going to be, and I have another friend, Kyle, that also did it. And what I told him is that's perhaps the best investment you're going to make in your life because it's the amount of money that due to compounding, you're going to see the most returns in the future.
Right.
Because you're starting at 22. By the time you take it out at 59, that's almost, that's around 30 years that you've been putting money into. So if you want to get ahead of the program, open up a Roth IRA. The sooner sooner the best.
No, I did a video on our YouTube. You can go check it out. That the difference between starting at 20 and 30 years old, assuming a 7% return annually in the stock market, is more than $600,000.
Yeah, it's insane.
So by waiting 10 years to start your Roth, you're missing on 10 years that your money would have compounded, and you're missing out on a lot of money. So the sooner you can start, the better. You don't have to contribute $6,000. I had some extra cash from like my internships that I had saved, and I thought better than staying in the bank or me wasting it in Robinhood on some random stocks, I might as well put it into a Roth IRA. That way I can't touch it unless I get. Cause it's also a psychological thing. Cause if you have your money on your Robinhood, if you need that money, if you go on a trip, what happened to me, a funny story. If you go on a trip and you're running out of funds, you might be tempted to sell that Apple stock to pay for the trip. But if it's in the Roth, there's no way you can take it out because you're going to get taxed and you're going to get a penalty.
Yeah, there's going to be a huge pain in the ass.
So it's not worth it.
Yeah, it's not worth it.
It's super hard.
So at the beginning, you mentioned the thing in the matching. So getting closer into the 401k sponsor programs with your employees, the matching is literally free money.
Yeah.
What it says is it's the company tells you, hey, besides the government encouraging you to save money, we want to encourage you as well. So what the company tells you is if you put X amount of money, I'm gonna match you. So it's literally if you put $1, I'm gonna put $1. So without getting too deep into the details, the only thing we wanted to mention is a lot of people are confused with contributions. What you have to understand is your employer is not gonna match 100% of your funds because they're gonna run out of money. They usually have a percentage of, they say, hey, if you make $100, the first $6 that you put into, I'll match it.
So they normally do percentages, right?
And normally do percentages.
So we're gonna match you. We're gonna max 6%. We're gonna max the first 6% that you put in.
Yeah.
Right?
So usually, let's say if you hear something like 6%, 50%, that means that if you make $100, they're gonna match you up to dollar number 6. Because if you put in $6, and they're not gonna put in $6 on the table, they're gonna put in 3. Because they match 50 cents in the dollar for the first 6% that you put in.
Right.
So that's matching, which is kind of like a big one that people have like a hard time understanding.
And the difference between the Roth IRA and that one, and a 401k, and a traditional 401k or a traditional retirement account, is that you can put in more money. The maximum for a 401k is $19,500 per year, which obviously if you can max that out, that means you're saving a lot of money. There's a society, a community called FIRE, Financial Independent Retire Early, that they strive to save like 60% of their income.
Oh, wow.
That way, like they make enough money by the time they're 30, 35, they can retire early with the money they have.
Yeah.
And one of the things they say is to max out your 401k and your Roth, which is, imagine, $25,000 into your retirement accounts a year, which is a lot.
So like all books say like 401ks definitely do it. It's literally free money of your employer giving you the contribution. The only thing, and this is what a lot of people don't know, there's a thing called, I think it's called the vesting period, something like that, which your employer says, hey, we're going to keep tabs with like how much money you're contributing into your 401k. However, we're only going to match you when you've been in the company for 2 years is usually the case.
Right.
So, those first 2 years, you're not going to see any money. And the time you hit your second year anniversary, so like, for example, I'm halfway there, they'll put in like all the money that you contributed in the table.
Oh, so they don't put it in?
They don't put it in. Like I knew someone, which I can mention to you after, that quit 3 months before the vesting period ended.
And you don't get it, of
course. He never saw the money.
Yeah.
So that's a big one. So that's when it comes to matching.
That's something they do in like venture capital when they like give shares to like the employees. They have a vesting period, which is normally like 2 years.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of dispute like when companies don't want to give shares to employees that are not as useful. they might fire them 3 months before, and that's something that happens a lot.
Yeah, that's a big one. A lot of people don't know that.
I didn't know that.
And that even happened to me, that the first time I was like, hey, you know, when I'm going to start seeing like the influx of the company just putting in the money into my account, yeah, it doesn't work the way. There's a vesting period. It's not that easy to get the information. So if you start working, you might want to contact HR and ask. Like I, for example, I don't know what the contribution from my company is. I think it's like up to the first 6%. So I just put in 6%. Oh, and another one is, for example, right now I started including 6%, right? Because I saw that my company contributes 6%. The way I do it is that I set up something automatic that at the end of every single year, I increase it by 1%. So starting, I think like next month, I'm going to start putting into my 401k 7%. And the reason why I do it after 1 year is because after a year, you're probably maybe going to get a salary increase. So it increases your thing without you even knowing it. Right. And that's the benefit, which is that you're paying yourself even before you get the money into your bank account. You're already putting money into your 401k, which is really important. So I really encourage people to, you know, set that increase annually to more than 1%, and that's going to help.
And going back to the psychological thing, there's a thing called lifestyle inflation. So when you get a salary bump, whatever percent might be 10%, might be 2%, might be 20%. You might want to get a better apartment, spend more money eating out, and that's a psychological way to say, you know what, I'm gonna save more since I'm making more money, and that's money that you're not gonna see in your bank account. Yeah. So you spend more. So that's a way to try to stay as frugal as you can, save as much money as you can, because at the end of the day, saving is important, especially for us young people, because the earlier we save, the more money we're gonna have in the future.
Exactly.
And yeah, one of the things that Ramit says is that definitely he has like an order of things you should do with your money. Obviously, if you run out of money to save, you stop. But you should always start with your 401k, because that's free money. Yeah. That's just free money that the company's going to give you. You start there. You get up to the match. Then you max out your Roth. And then he gives you options. You can keep putting into your 401k. You can create different savings accounts for things like a wedding, a car, a house.
College, which has like a special tax treatment also,
Or you can create a health savings account, which we can talk about later, but it's another complete different topic. But I wanted to ask you, so you have a 2-year vesting period. Yeah. After the 2 years, do they give you the money for all 2 years, or they give you the money for the first month?
No, they give you the money for the first 2 years, I think. Like it's the complete thing.
And they just put, so that's going to be a big amount.
That's going to be a big amount, but usually, so every single employer is going to have their, like the bank that they do their 401k with. I have Vanguard, which is a really good one because, you know, it's a really well-established bank and all that stuff. But usually your 401k is going to limit you in the places that you can invest money on. Okay. For me, I can't invest in individual stocks in my 401k, and I wouldn't do it even if I could. Right. But there's like very limited funds, and since my company is so big, they actually have like specific funds that are made just for my company. So above the 6% that the company matches, it doesn't really make sense for me to be investing it in the 401k with the company. So this is when you get a little bit down into the details, but this is also recommended by my brother, is if you have a 401k with a company, try to max out the matching there. And then the extra money, the extra percentages that you're saving, try to open up your own 401k. Yeah. So you have your own 401k that you probably open. If I was you, for example, I will open up the 401k with my employer, max that out as much as I can, right. And then all the extra, put it into my own 401k, and then invest in the things that I want to invest on outside of that.
If you want to keep investing in a retirement account.
Exactly. If you want to keep matching like Ramit says and all that stuff.
Okay, beautiful.
So that's opening your own 401k, which is something that is recommended.
Okay, and obviously, another thing you can do if you don't want to have that money tied into a retirement is you can also create another brokerage account and just invest outside of it. But obviously, you're not going to get any tax treatment. But let's say if you don't want to have your money laying around in a bank account and you want to invest in an index fund or something to hopefully have money 10 years to pay for a house, you can do that too. Yeah. But I wanted to ask you, we here at Books and Beers, we don't like picking stocks.
The allocations, that was the last point that I also had.
Because we like to invest on things like index funds. Mm-hmm. And obviously there's mutual funds, but a big thing that Ramit mentions is that mutual funds normally charge something called the expense ratio.
Yeah, the expense ratios are higher.
And obviously I don't know what percentage it is. I think it might be 1%, but 1% per year. But Ramit says not to pay anything above 1% because let's say you make in a year a 7% return, they're taking away 1% return. Yeah. So it doesn't make sense when you have index funds that charge 0.01%.
Yeah.
So that's something that we like, and I think you have the funds you invest in.
Yeah, I have my funds here, which I'm not gonna get too much detail because it might get a little too long. But as far as allocations, what I always say is page 383 of Random Walk, which is the book that I have here. But it's, in summary, is index funds, and you want to diversify as much as possible without getting into too much finance theory. But it's basically you're mixing up local stocks, you're mixing up international stocks, and then at the end of the day, it's a matter of stocks versus bonds, right?
Right.
So you told me once that Ramit, what he says is that stocks are kind of the accelerator and then bonds are kind of the brake.
The brake.
And usually how it works is that as you get older, you start braking more than you're accelerating.
Because you have less time to recover from a downfall or something.
Exactly, and less likely to tolerate risk. But at the beginning, for example, for my portfolio is 100% stocks.
Yeah, of course.
Because that's what it's recommended. Usually people say that you should have stocks, bonds, then a small percent in cash. It's not really that needed in our age because cash is usually when there's
that's our opinion again.
That's our opinion.
not financial advice.
Yeah. But yeah, I just have, so in my portfolio, long story short, is that I have mostly in stocks, both local and international. The guy from Random Walk recommends that you have a lot of money in the emerging markets, in developing markets.
Do you have REITs, like real estate investment?
And I have REITs, and that's the only difference from 100% stocks that I have.
Yeah.
So usually stock, REITs, and bonds, and then maybe you want to have some cash. The only reason why you should have some cash is because let's say that there's a huge downfall in the market, you want to put that money on.
You can always buy in, yeah.
So you can always buy in. But since when you have a 401k, you probably have the influx of cash every single month. You don't really need to have that cash standing on there.
Right.
If you need cash, you have the next month, and the cash is going to be coming in.
Right.
So that helps you.
And it's a way, and a good thing about doing this monthly is that it's a way to dollar cost average automatically.
Correct.
So dollar cost average is when you invest like the same amount of money every month. Because
regardless of what happens, it can be up, high, whatever.
Regardless of what happens, because obviously there's people trying to time the market and looking at graphs. Since Falcon and I don't have that time, or we don't believe in that sometimes, the one of the best ways to just invest in the market is to invest monthly, because if the market's high, you're not going to buy as much. And if the market drops, you're going to buy at a discount. So at the end of the day, it all averages out. And that's a safe way of investing if you're diversified.
Yeah, and in hand by hand with the dollar cost averaging is the concept of rebalancing, right? So right now in my portfolio, I have like all these different index funds, and they're all usually like 10, 50%, 15%. Usually books recommend that you rebalance, which means that if you had, let's say you had 60% in stocks and 40% in bonds, maybe stocks do better than bonds, so you're gonna have like a different level. When at the end of the year comes, which is usually when they recommend to rebalance once a year, you basically go and you sell the ones that were a little too high and you buy the ones that were a little too low to go back to the balancing that you should have. If you don't do that, rebalancing is just a way to buy low and sell high.
Yeah, same thing if, let's say, the U.S. market didn't do as well, but emerging markets went up 200% one year.
You're selling high and you're buying low.
You're going to have a huge disbalance. I don't know if that's a word, disbalance, but it's not going to be balanced. Yeah. And so at the end of the year, you obviously rebalance everything. You take the gains, not the gains, but you take the gains from the emerging markets that if they went up 200%, they're probably going to be expensive. Yeah. And you put them into the U.S. market, which is probably low because it went down.
Recommended from what I've heard is 1%. And depending on your bank, I know my bank has it. You can have like an option to say, this is how often I want you to rebalance.
And it does it automatically?
It does it automatically. Beautiful. Yeah. So that's what I have. I have it once a year, and I think I have it like towards the end of the year.
That's one of the things that Ramit mentions a lot, is to do all this automatically, because if you have to sit down once a month to transfer all your money from your savings accounts to the investment, you're not going to do it, and you're going to miss out on time, and it's just not worth it. And so nowadays, with banks having an online platform and everything, you can have it so your salary, you probably know this better because you already have a salary, but that your salary comes in, Fidelity or Vanguard takes out from that bank account. You can have, so if you have a savings account that you're saving for a house, it takes out from that account too. That your bills, utilities, everything takes out from that account. And going back again to the psychological aspect, when you see that number in your checking balance or whatever, you know more or less what you can spend. And you can also have, like, let's say for your emergency fund, which we talked about last episode, you can also have an account that takes away from your...
Like a savings that takes it away
automatically. And at that point, like, once you see your account, that's your spending money. That's the money that you have available to spend.
Mm-hmm. Because by the time that you get your money, like, by the time you get your paycheck, the government, you already pay the government in taxes. Right. You probably already pay your insurance with pre-insurance money. It's time to pay yourself. So that's why you should have your 401k that takes it away automatically, and like your savings that takes it away automatically.
And yeah, if you have to do it manually, it's more than likely that there's going to be a month that you spend more than you should, and then you don't contribute to your Roth or your 401k, or your 401k, it's automatically. You don't contribute to your Roth or to a savings account. But that's why being automatic is better, because that way you know what you have to spend. Yeah. And you don't, let's say you're out one night, and obviously we all have drinks, we all have fun. And then you might say, whatever, I'm just going to treat myself and spend more. You're more likely to spend more. Mm-hmm. And then the next day you realize you spent more than you should have. And you can't contribute to one of these accounts. So if it's automatic, it's better psychologically. It's easier.
And I think one of the issues, and don't quote me on this, is for the employee 401ks, you can't put cash in. Like, it has to be automatically coming from your paycheck.
Right.
So if you're kind of falling behind, because I didn't set up my 401k at the beginning because we couldn't for the first 2 months. You can't catch up. The only way is like you have to change your percentages for a month and then go back, which is a different thing. I'll kind of give my final points, because I will maybe running a little over time. Is the keys that I believe are really important is like having things automatic, investing automatically. Start as early as possible. Start as you get your first job or even before that. As far as allocation, really recommend the one that Random Walk recommends, the one that maybe I will teach you to be rich.
And you can look up allocations on Google, and you'll see various graphs that you can use.
And there's also usually banks like my bank, even without a fee, they give you like the recommendations based on your age. So that's something you can look into. And if there's 1,000 of videos online, like we always talk about this, we'll keep talking about it. But if not, you could seek some help. Try to find a financial advisor you can communicate with. Just try to stay away from actively managed funds.
Yeah.
Because that's what's going to kill you in the long run with the expense ratios.
Yeah. So yeah, in my opinion, watch YouTube, get educated, read. That helped us out a lot.
Yeah.
Automate everything. When everything is done automatically, you're more likely to save. Mm-hmm. And just start as early as possible. Every person that's 40, if you ask them I asked my dad, I asked my grandmother, what would you have done different? They tell me I would have started when I was 20, because the power of the compounding effect is insane.
Yeah. You
might think it's not a lot. Let's say you start with $6,000 and you make 7%. That might not seem a lot to you, but in 40 years, if you keep contributing, it's just gonna grow and grow and grow exponentially.
Yeah.
And that's something that we always hear recommend in Books and Beers. It's our opinion, and always stay away from picking individual stocks if you don't have the time to put in to do your research and learn about the company and read the financial statements. There's a lot of tools available, such as index funds, to make it easier.
Yeah. Well, my official last thing is I have a goal, and I've mentioned this before, of retiring with nothing less than seven figures in my bank account. And I just want to do a plug that, like, if you watch Barney's video from Roth IRAs that he did a few weeks ago, you see that as long as you stay consistent, as long as you max out your Roth, it's really not that hard.
It's
really not that hard. It's really not that hard. So
hoping that the stock market keeps going at a 7% rate on average, it's not that hard.
It's really not that hard.
But if you have any questions, we could
leave them in the comments. We'll definitely answer them. Yeah.
There's a lot of things we didn't mention, and we can talk about this topic for hours and hours. So if you have any questions, if you need help setting up, leave it in the comments, and we'll answer them.
Yeah. Well, This was awesome. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. If you have any other things that you want us to talk about, let us know. And that's it. Peace.